Hey, Cal here. As you may have noticed, we didn't publish the Playing with Power podcast onto YouTube for a while. Well, we're working on fixing that. On our normal off weeks, we'll be uploading the missing 7 episodes here for you to watch. On this episode, I, Cal, talk about my top 16 at Monarch's Marchesa event with Alex. I played Temur Pirates. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things cEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Cal.
And I am your host, Alex. Today, we're going to talk about Tournament EDH. I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about Cal's experience at Marchesa. Let's be real.
Hey, it was a great time. Great time in Seattle. But before we go any further, I wanted to talk quickly about our sponsor for this episode. TC's Rockets has one of the largest selection of toys, comics, and games in San Diego. With thousands of Magic the Gathering cards being added to their online store every morning, you'll never know what deals you'll find at tcsrockets.com. You can even keep up with the games by tuning into their Twitch streams every Tuesday and Friday for live paper Magic. Fuel up and check out TC's Rockets today. After that, take those cards for a spin during our webcam leagues, tournaments, and Patreon days over on our Patreon. You get all kind of benefits for your direct support. Finally, our merchandise store is back. We didn't like the quality of our last store, so we did some research and found a great new provider. The merchandise is much better in our opinion, and we are adding new designs all the time. Check out the podcast description for links to everything mentioned today. And as always, we have a Patreon shout out for today.
James Haley, how you doing, buddy? Thank you for your support to the Playing with Power podcast.
Thanks a lot, James. So, thanks for listening to our ad reads, everybody. But as Alex said, we are here to talk about my Marchesa experience a little bit. Marchesa, it's almost been a month now since that happened. But I had such a blast about with it that I still wanted to talk about it. Alex really wanted to talk to me about it. So, yeah, Alex. What do you want to know about my Marchesa experience?
I want to know because I didn't get a chance to go. Listen, I was so sad when I saw pictures of Marchesa.
I really wish you could have been there, Alex. You're one of my favorite cEDH players.
Oh my gosh, it looked like so much fun. It looked like a wonderful experience. Shout out to Monarch for hosting the event. Marchesa, absolutely wonderful. All right, man. I want to know, first of all, tell us about the deck that you brought to Marchesa.
Yes, so the deck that I brought to Marchesa was Temur Pirates. It is a mid-range creature-based deck with Malcolm and Tana in the command zone. And the main focus of the deck is to get out Glinthorn Buccaneer as quickly as possible, since Malcolm plus Glinthorn Buccaneer is an A plus B combo that'll just kill the entire table when you go to attacks. So lots of great utility creatures, lots of creature tutors since you're in green, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, it's a real classic mid-rangey grindy deck.
And what does Malcolm do?
Malcolm is a 2/2 blue flyer for 2 generic and a blue. When any pirate deals damage to an opponent, just any kind of damage, when a pirate deals damage to an opponent, create a treasure token.
That seems really good. Seems like a turn 1 Malcolm is a solid play.
Yeah, turn 1 Malcolm. Turns out 3-drop commanders plus Jeweled Lotus, which you can sacrifice to make 3 mana to cast only commanders. That's a really good combo.
Yeah. Free rocks that allow you to do things, that's just a sweet recipe for a win. And then you mentioned Glinthorn Buccaneer. What does that do?
Glinthorn Buccaneer, it is a Minotaur Pirate, a single generic mana and 2 red mana. It's a 2/4 with haste, and whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then it has an activated ability of a generic and a red, discard a card, draw a card, activate this ability only if Glinthorn Buccaneer is attacking. So it may not be super obvious on the tin, but if you go to attacks, attack with Glinthorn Buccaneer. Since it's attacking, you can activate its ability, discarding a card to draw a card. When you discard that card, Glinthorn Buccaneer will deal a damage to each of your opponents. With Malcolm on the battlefield, that'll get you 3 treasures because a pirate you control dealt damage to 3 different players. Since you drew a card off Glinthorn Buccaneer's ability and you have 3 new mana to work with, you can spend 2 of that mana to do it again. And this is a loop that allows you to do damage equal to the number of cards in your library to all of your opponents, which usually very easily kills them all.
That's super solid. I'm actually looking at Glinthorn Buccaneer right now. I wanted to see something. This card, you can only do that effect when it's attacking.
Yeah,
or in
you
combat.
can only activate its ability when it's attacking. However, there's some tricks you can play too. A lot of people these days know about the combo, and so they'll play around Glinthorn Buccaneer attacking. But there's some other shenanigans you can get up to just leverage its discard a card to deal 1 damage to each opponent. To still kill people without having to activate its attack only ability. But
that's very interesting. That's such an interesting card. I have questions I'm going to ask you, but
it's such a throwaway rare from Core 20. It's so funny. They're just like, we'll make this fun pirate that does this fun stuff in combat, and then they printed Malcolm in it, and it wins the game.
Yeah, it just wins the game. Does the thing. So you brought this to Marchesa. Now you could have chosen, all these other decks: Blue Farm, Kinnan, Ikra, Crom, like all these other like super fast decks. Why did you choose Pirates over that?
Yeah, so why did I choose Temur Pirates over a lot of, in classic fashion, I just could have played Blue Farm. Obviously, a lot of people know that once upon a time, my CEDH deck of choice was Rashmi. Why didn't I choose Rashmi? Why did I choose Temur Pirates? I recently came to the realization that even though I love Rashmi, the CEDH deck, as a concept, and I've tried out a ton of different types of CEDH decks, came to the realization that back in the day, before COVID, pretty much, I used to play a lot of 60 card Magic the Gathering. And almost exclusively what I was playing over there was mid-range decks. I was really good at that kind of back-and-forth play style, the grind and win through value kind of play style. I really enjoyed that, but I had never really tried it for CDH, specifically like with this creature-based kind of stuff. So once I saw Zrob kind of take down and performed very well in a bunch of playing with power tournaments and leagues and stuff with this Temur Pirates list, I was really intrigued by it. So I picked it up and I started playing it, and it's like the CDH deck that I've easily had the most fun with in it for a very long time. In addition to that, it also happens to be very strong. It's definitely not strong in the traditional CEDH way that a lot of people think of, stereotypically like Blue Farm. It's not card advantage. There's not card advantage in the command zone. You don't get to play all of the most busted effects all in one kind of list, but you get to do a very cohesive game plan very consistently on an axis that people don't really ever interact with, because a lot of people, especially when they're going into a tournament setting, get a little bit greedy and they don't bring their 6 removal spells. They probably bring 2 to 3. I think that the average in the top 16 was like under 4 removal spells per deck list or something for Monarch. So the reason I picked it was, one, it's definitely the deck I'm most comfortable with because it is the deck I have had the most fun playing for the last 4 months. So I've willingly put in a lot of games on it. I've gotten to know the list really well. And also I thought by bringing creature-based win cons that I could tutor out very consistently, while also being able to bring all the blue counter magic and some of the red removal and all the green creature tutors and stuff, that I'd be able to very consistently impact the game and still be able to like win very quickly, if that all makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think creature-based combo mid-range decks are really strong in general. There is not a lot of creature removal. Not only is there not a lot of creature removal, there's not a lot of interaction that hits creatures in the same way at the time of Marchesa. But even now, like I still don't see that. So I think it's really, really strong. So you pick your deck, You're like, all right, I'm gonna go with pirates. I really like this mid-range plan. You get to the tournament and you see like all these other people you haven't seen because they don't live in Ohio. And you start playing games and you start seeing the decks doing pretty well. Did you think it was going to be as well positioned as it was?
Honestly, no. I'm very aware that it's like a pretty good Magic the Gathering deck for CEDH. And I figured that by playing creatures, I would bypass a lot of the hate that people would be bringing along. But yeah, I honestly was a lot more well positioned in a lot of pods than I thought I was going to be. I wouldn't have pegged it as like a very well positioned deck going into the tournament. I kept joking, but not joking, that I was just going to show up and have a lot of fun and go 0-4 and that kind of stuff. And that's okay because I was there to hang out and just try out a CEDH tournament for the first time and finally play a deck that I loved against people IRL and that kind of stuff. But it ended up going very well for me.
I love that. I love that a lot. And so, okay. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, Cal did make it to day 2.
Spoilers, Alex.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, I did make the top 16. Yes, I did.
You did make the top 16. So, really excited to hear that you did so well. Was there anything that you had to do to prep for the tournament to get you to day 2?
Prep for the tournament. I know like a lot of people ground out a lot of games and put a lot of work into selecting like the exec list that they wanted to play and all that kind of stuff. But being a part of Playing with Power, I do incidentally get a lot of games in, granted with the same like relatively small group of people. But around the time when Monarch was coming up, I had just so happened to have played Malcolm Tana for a lot of channel games and on a few different people's streams and stuff. I definitely didn't do a lot of very specific prep for the tournament beyond I worked with Zane, good old Zane or Zrob, noted Malcolm Tana aficionado. We both had been testing Tana and Malcolm a little bit in the upcoming to Monarch because we both knew as soon as we knew we were going, it was the deck we were going to play. So we compared a lot of notes, and my main practice was we went to SCG Con Indianapolis the weekend before Seattle, and I played Malcolm Tana constantly for 12 to 14 hours a day for 3 days. That was my tournament
boot camp.
Yeah.
For sure.
From Friday until Sunday, I played constant Malcolm Tana from about like 9 a.m. until probably about 1 a.m.
Wow.
for 3 days in a row. So
okay.
But that was really just beating off the rough edges and all that kind of stuff, because it's a deck that I knew. It's a deck that doesn't change very much, because when it's a pile of value creatures and like the best non-creature spells that have ever been printed, not a whole lot changes, especially in the Temur coloration these days. So it was a list I already knew well, and then I boot camped myself the weekend before. And compared notes with Zane, which was very nice because Zane really knows his stuff. Put me onto Spire of Industry. That was the big change. We changed a land. That was our big change before the tournament. I know.
Oh my god, that's awesome. Was there anything that you like prepped for in terms of like metas that you might have like seen coming? Like, oh, okay, if I'm playing against an ad nauseum deck, I'm gonna do this, or if I'm playing against a stacks deck, I'm gonna do this. Is there any stacks pieces that you were like, I really can't handle that?
Yeah, so there's pretty much like one card in the game that this deck just can't beat, and that's without help, and that's Drannith Magistrate. This deck is pretty much never ever going to be a resolved Drannith Magistrate unless you can get out some really funky combos and that kind of stuff. Rule of Law effects are kind of tough when you're actually trying to win the game, but I personally went in with a couple very meta specific changes. I opted to play Miscast, which is a card that a lot of Temur Pirates aren't so high on, but I think that it really helps just get rid of like Ad Nauseam. I knew I was going to see Ad Nauseam a lot. I knew I'd be running into a lot of those kind of decks who would just kind of try to go under me. Like I was honestly very afraid of running into Cody, which is never a deck you play against outside of a tournament setting, because it's a boring deck that people don't really play recreationally. But I was worried about running into that. Miscast will just ruin Cody's day. Great at countering Ad Nauseam on those really, and Peer into the Abyss on those really mana tight turns. So I went up on Miscast, which isn't a super common thing. I did also anticipate to run into a lot of stacks and decks in general that would kind of want to slow down the game and play on their level, just because of the people I knew that was coming. There's a lot of people in the more content creatory sphere who I knew were going to be there, and I knew they like to play stacksier decks. So I played Birthing Pod. Birthing Pod, also not a super common choice for CDH decks in general, but it's also a newer kind of Malcolm Tana tech. But when you're in those grindy rule of law games and that kind of stuff where everyone's only casting one spell a turn, it can be an incredible piece to just, change your Birds of Paradise into a Dockside Extortionist, or, a Dork into a Gilded Drake. This deck goes very well from 1 to 2, and then from 2 into Glinthorn Buccaneer. You want to do that all day long. So it really helps power out our singular Wincon and Glinthorn Buccaneer. It can really help cash in some of the dorks that eventually you don't want to use anymore into much more powerful 2-drops, specifically Dockside, Phantasmal Image, and Gilded Drake. So those were my 2 really spicy, not spicy, but meta calls, if you would. Those were 2 cards that I definitely put in the deck that I don't think I would play otherwise if I wasn't expecting to run into very specific types of decks.
Got it. I'm looking up commanders that you could have. There is none. I wanted to see if there was like a 2 CMC red-green commander, because that would have been great. Holy smokes. Birthing Pod, that bad boy, and a Glinthorn, thank you very much.
That would be hot.
That would be super hot. Okay, well, that's really cool. I want to know, you ran Birthing Pod, right? Was there any other tech that's like in this deck specifically unique or helps this deck progress further than maybe other decks? For those of you who can't see him, because this isn't a video, he is scratching his chin.
Really thonking here. I think the hot tech in this deck is it's not exactly unheard of hot tech. In fact, it used to be a CEDH deck all on its own. But specifically for a few different reasons, this deck does play Niv Mizzet Perun. For one, because you have so many treasures laying around, and because red and blue are kind of actually your primary colors. You can very easily cast him if you can get to 6 mana, which, that's not as easy. But the blue, red, it's not that big of an ask. We play Niv Mizzet Perun because it's a great threat. In the grindiest of grindy games, you can Eldritch Evolution your Tana the Bloodsower into it. You can Neoform your Wandering Archaic into it, that kind of stuff. Because it's a great value piece. A Niv Mizzet Perun resolved onto the battlefield. A lot of decks will struggle to beat that. But we also incidentally already play Keen Sense and Tandem Lookout, because people came to the conclusions that if you're in a deck that wants to grind, you have a 2/2 flying commander that you want to hit people with every turn. It's pretty good to have these effects in the deck. You can also slap them on Glinthorn Buccaneer for some end-step wins, but that's a different topic altogether. But if you have those effects in your deck, then Niv Mizzet Perun is like kind of free. That's just like a free plan D win con, Cast Niv Mizzet Perun, he can't be countered. Whenever you draw a card, he deals a damage to something, and then you just slap Tandem Lookout or Keen Sense on him, which makes you draw a card whenever the enchanted creature deals a damage to something. Boom, boom, boom. Deal damage to people equal to the amount of cards in your library, which usually won't kill people. But you'll probably have drawn your Glinthorn Buccaneer, cast it, go to end step, discard to hand size, deal another 80 damage to people. Fun.
Speaking of hot tech, I have questions. This is where I was like earlier, I was like, I have questions, but I wanted to save it for this specific part. So in your build of Temur Pirates, do you think Professional Facebreaker is going to make it into the list?
Yeah, I think almost certainly Professional Facebreaker will make it in. The deck is secretly at a spot where cuts are kind of really hard. Almost everything in the deck is doing something hot, and unlike most Temur Pirates players, I am a lands believer, so I'm on 28 lands instead of 25 to 27, which removes a little bit of action. But I like playing lands when I don't have card advantage engines in the command zone. But I think that this deck will definitely like Professional Facebreaker. Making more treasures is great. You always have bundles of treasures laying around in the grindier games, and just turning those into card advantage when you, like I just said, you don't have card advantage in command zone. Being able to do that with one of your cards, awesome. So I'm sure it belongs in my list. I just need to find a little home for it.
I really like what Professional Facebreaker does. I've seen it in a lot of lists recently. I think with Malcolm, it's just such a slam dunk because it's
exactly
like turn 1 land mana crypt into Malcolm, turn 2 into Professional Facebreaker Ragavan. Like it's just
you're like, that's
oh
just
my God.
like so much card advantage.
Yeah, Timna who what? Like oh my God, it's so good. Another card that Professional Facebreaker is a 2 generic 1 red human warrior 2/3 with menace. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Yeah, you now have an additional Malcolm. And then its second ability is sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Who knew that ad nauseum in a Temur deck existed? Well, that's what Professional Facebreaker does. Another card that I thought of is has anyone ever played Savage Summoning in the list? Savage Summoning is a green instant. It cannot be countered. The next creature spell you can cast at flash speed and will enter with a +1/+1 counter, and it cannot be countered as well.
I don't know if anyone has ever tested it. It does seem like one of those spells that I've always been a little bit shocked that Savage Summoning isn't played a little bit more in these kind of lists, but I think the reasoning is, I don't know how useful making your creature spells uncounterable really is. Like flashing them in is fun. Being able to flash in a creature is a lot of fun, but even looking at, like a lot of the blue decks will bring, the classic package of, delay, dispel, flusterstorm, mana drain, mental misstep, pact, swan song, a lot. And like of those, only like half of those counter spells counter creatures. So I think there's a lot of times, where these decks just like scoot by on, just not doing that when they would instead. But I would say specifically in my list, in a spot where I would be playing Savage Summoning, I'm playing Autumn's Veil instead, in addition to Veil of Summer. So, yeah, it's like one of those cards that would like probably make it into the list if there were like 10 more slots in the list. It would be like the 110th card kind of thing.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I'm a big fan of Savage Summoning. There's a lot of really fun cards I've used with it, so I've just been happy with it. But you have
Savage Summoning and a Void Winnower over there?
Oh my gosh. Listen, if I could Savage Summoning a Void Winnower, I would do that in a heartbeat. Void Winnower is in more of my list than it should be. I just want to put that out there. Man, what a card. All right. Okay. So that's awesome. I like the tech that is in here. I think Niv is a great inclusion, to what you are trying to do. So you make it to day 2, you're doing great, fantastic stuff. You made a top 16 of a huge CDH tournament. You're an accomplished Magic player now. Looking back, what were some of the interesting parts of the tournament?
I think one of the most interesting games of the tournament was actually against, of all people, Zane. It was Zane and I, a Temur Pirates mirror, who we were playing the exact same 100 cards. not the exact same 100 cards. I was playing Abrade, and he was playing Geist's Retrieval. Alchemist's Retrieval.
There it is, yeah.
But we were playing the same 99 cards with one card difference that we disagreed on. So it was a mirror with an Urza Stacks player and Yuriko. And Yuriko kept the interaction hand. So it was an incredibly back and forth battle of pretty much Zane and I taking all of the game actions in Urza, like untapping, destroying the meaningful things that we had done, or just like playing another Stacks piece, and then passing. And then Yuriko just being like, I actually play Damnation in my Yuriko list, so all of the incremental advantage you and Zane have eked out over the last 3 turns, we'll just get rid of that. And then it came down really close to it. I was going to win on my next turn, and then Zane ripped Niv Mizzet off the top with a Curiosity already known in hand, so that picked up the win for him. Another interesting game of the tournament. In round 2, I was running pretty high off of my round 1 win, and then I got really lucky in that I went first, and I had Jeweled Lotus, Glinthorn Buccaneer in hand, plus the mana to cast it on turn 2, and that just got there too. So, that's just the kind of the hands that Jeweled Lotus will let you do all the time. Like Jeweled Lotus hands versus non-Jeweled Lotus hands in this deck are just nuts.
Could you win? Like, I'm trying to think. Is that possible? Could you win turn 1?
Possible to win turn 1. Let's see.
What hand would you need
to do that? To win on turn 1,
yeah.
I would guess to make it easy, it would be some kind of 1-drop, a lot of mana plus a Jeweled Lotus plus a big Dockside because you're going 4th with a Neoform also in hand to get your Glinthorn Buccaneer. Like I think that's almost the situation. Like
does Dockside need to be big? Let's see. It'd be Jeweled. You need 6 mana. That's what you need. You need 6 mana.
1,
7.
2, 3,
How much does it cost to activate?
2.
It costs 2. So you need.
Yep. But
you need
1. Okay, so a real Temur Pirates trick here is there is still a round of priority at the end of combat after you have dealt damage to people in which Glinthorn Buccaneer is still an attacker. So yes. So you can like damage people with Glinthorn Buccaneer to get an extra treasure and then start your loop if you need to do that.
Okay, so all right. Land. Okay, you get land, Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus gets Malcolm. And then you still have a land. If you play land, Crypt and you use you literally don't want to spare any mana. So it's not Crypt. I think it's land petal, diamond, and Crypt. Wow, you do need a lot of mana. You do need the Crypt.
I think it's like really, there's a really theoretically really easy situation where the hand is just like Jeweled Lotus plus another rock plus a land plus Dockside plus Neoform, where if the Dockside is even just like for 4, you win the game, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's enough theory crafting for one episode.
Sorry.
We'll be lucky if Mike doesn't cut that one out.
It's all good. So if there was another tournament this weekend, will there be any changes you'd make today?
Yeah, if I were to make a change to the deck today from the deck that I played for Marchesa, I would take out Chain of Vapor and I would put in Alchemist's Greeting. What? I just named that bounce spell.
Alchemist Retrieval?
Alchemist Retrieval. Yes, I would definitely play Alchemist Retrieval in my deck just as another bounce effect. That's not Chain of Vapor, because Chain of Vapor feels bad every time I cast it these days in CEDH, especially in a creature-based deck where you always want all of your creatures to stay on the battlefield. Chain of Vapor, not the greatest. Other changes, if I were to make a change today, Beyond that, I'm actually really, really happy with my list. I probably would actually go down to 27 lands just to play the 100th best card, just to get like one more good card in there. I know I said I was a 28 card believer earlier, but specifically in this situation, I would like the slightest more gas.
That makes sense.
But I don't know what that card is. Today, that card would be Facebreaker, but a month ago, I don't know.
Okay. Awesome, man. This is wonderful. Thank you for telling us about your experience at Marchesa. For our listeners, how do you think you would approach Marchesa or a big CDH tournament? What do you think your deck choice might be? Are you even interested in playing CDH tournaments yourself? And if so, how do you prepare for them?
Thanks for listening today, everybody. A big thanks to our sponsors, TC Rockets, and also viewers and listeners like you on Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a comment, like this video, and subscribe if you're already not a subscriber. If you're listening to this anywhere else, give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You'd be surprised how much it helps. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and more. As the social media expert at Playing with Power, I'm always looking to expand my reach onto new platforms, so you never know what will pop up. All links are in the episode notes. That wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk more about our favorite format and our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.